Hello my intrepid Land Rover friends. I have been doing lots of work on my car. I have replaced more recently the drop links and the rear lower suspension arm. This arm I ignored, the other side I've done, but this one I ignored because I did it a couple of years ago. Now I'm slightly concerned that this is making a noise. I can't quite track it down. I thought it might be the front suspension, but I'm starting to think it's this, because when you come out of the car and the compressor releases a bit of a puff, which Land Rovers do, or Discovery 3s do, and the suspension lowers down, this is going very clicky, which makes me just a little bit concerned about the bushings at the rear on this top arm. And when I did it, I wasn't quite as experienced, and I'm just slightly unsure whether I did it right. Obviously it takes a great man to admit he's wrong, and a greater man to rectify the mistake. So hopefully I can be a good person and do that. So I'm slightly annoyed with myself because I have had the tracking done at this point, but if I'm careful and mark this carefully, and I'm not planning to replace the arm, the worst that I might do is try and push out the bushes and replace them. I bought this part on a well-known auction website, and it was like a new other, and it's a genuine Land Rover one. But what I have noticed when I did fit it, or come back to it after I had fitted it, because I didn't notice this when I did it, is that it's got no bump stops in it. So I don't know whether that would affect it over time. It's a few years ago that I did it. I think it's probably about 4 years, maybe a bit longer when I did it ago. So it should have lasted. It's a genuine one, but I just don't know whether I did it as well as I've done the rest of the rear suspension, because I really made an effort this time to do everything as you know, correctly and properly as possible. So I'm going to undo it, unbolt it, and have an inspection and see what I think. The reason I kind of slightly, again, don't want to mess about with it is because it's got all these, you know, the top arm's got all the brake pipes that connect to it, and you've got to, you know, get down and get in there and do all that. So, you know, it's just one of those things, isn't it? So taking it all apart more than I want to. I'm hoping, I mean, these were replaced. I'm not very impressed because these were replaced again when I did it all last time, and it's still gone rusty. So they can't be genuine parts, I don't think. Probably Brit part, which is may get some comments, but there you go. And these clips, I've got more of these clips, so it's just more of a, just, you know, you have to re-bleed the brakes once you start taking it apart. This side's got the brake wear sensor cable as well, so it's just a little bit more faffy. But we'll have a look and see what we find, and let's see if we can confirm whether this is making untoward noises that we don't want. I'm just going to mark my some alignment marks here as close as I can, so that when we put it back together it should be mainly aligned. Yeah, hopefully. And bought some of these nice white marker pens which give you a nice clear marking where your lines are. To see how difficult it is to undo. I'm going to probably try and undo this first, and then just see if I can wiggle the arm up and down a bit to see whether it's making weird noises or not. 18mm this side, 21 at the back. A little spanner extender. Let's see if we just crack this off a little bit. Yay, there you go. It's always the first bit that's the hardest. Right, I've got this the suspension arm out of its mounting with the rose joint. I've noticed that we've got a nice split in that rose joint, so that will need replacing. Hallelujah. The other side was fine when I did it. So I've got to work out how to do that, which is going to be interesting. So I have got some pullers that I've recently invested in, so they may be coming in, and I'm just going to try and work out what's going on here with this arm. I just realised I've got a lot of tension in this sensor here, so I don't want to damage that. So I'm just going to loosen the tension on that and see what we can find is going on with the arm. Okay, so I've undone this and released it from it's not giving me any like really weird and wonderful noises, but I'm gonna undo it and just make sure that it's the bushes are okay. And obviously it's a little bit of a faff because you have to undo the brake pipes and things, but I think it's just worth a bit of investigation just to see, because I'm getting some noise from what I think is the rear. It could be the front, you see. Oh, such is the joy of Land Rovers, because they do make weird and wonderful noises. So I'm going to have a go at this, and then I will see what it is. We'll take it out and we'll have an inspection and see how it's going. So just move out of the way the brake pad wear sensor and the wheel speed sensor, and then those wires are out of the way. Then I've clamped the brake hose at the top and the bottom to minimise loss of fluid, and then we'll just crack these this pipe off, and then unclip it so that the ends of the pipes can be released. Just get a bit of toweling up the back there to stop that leaking all over the place. I mean, these pipes replaced, these brake pipes were replaced last time I did the arm, and a bit corroded at the top. It's not too bad at the bottom, but obviously the top gets the most of all the wet. Right, brake pipes off. I'm just going to use a broken end of a brake pipe that I took off from the other side. So I've just kind of crimped it up and put that on there just to plug this up so there's not get any rubbish in it, because obviously we're going to be messing around at the back. Not going to do it up very tight, but just to stop it from having an ingress of dirt, which you really don't want on your brake system. I'm not going to take the pipe out from the top, so I'm going to just sort of wedge it out the back here somewhere so that it's just kind of out of the way as much as possible. It doesn't matter about that side because I haven't got to interfere with the it's got a locking nut on that side. So I think what I might do is just try and undo the bolts that attach to the top, because then I could lower the suspension, as in drop the air out of the suspension and get it to ride height and readjust it. Or I may even be daring and try and replace the bushes in this arm, which I have got. I'm just not sure how easy that is to do and whether they would just press out easily enough. I'm just going to, and I want to inspect this and see how corroded it actually is. The other thing I just need to do before commencing with anything else is pop a bit of WD-40 on the height sensor and just push it off so that it doesn't get damaged as we mess about with the suspension. So that needs a little bit of that just to make it loose. So this is now freed up, and I cannot tell for the life of me whether that's good or bad. It does move around. It isn't actually making weird and wonderful noises now, but of course it isn't. But let's just see. It's not particularly tight, but it's just awkward. So that's interesting that has gone down and that side is moving. So I don't know if I ever did it up tight enough on that side. That would make sense. So that is now let's explain. So I've undone this one enough so that the bush rotates, but the bushes should not rotate when they're tight. So on the other side it shouldn't have dropped. Now, so you can see there's been some movement. So if we have a look at this side, after I haven't untightened it, is moving, and I don't think that's right. I think they should be tight so that would make a lot of sense. So the noise of what we've been hearing is this bush twisting round. Wow. So it means that when I did that, I didn't do it up tight enough. Silly man. So I'm not going mad. Right, let's get this thing off. So this is 21 at the back here, 21 mil, and just once it's undone a little bit, the tension comes off and it just drops. It shouldn't be, because I didn't do it that long ago, it should come off. I said with bated breath. And it shouldn't be seized. The bolt's not seized, so you know. Coming out for inspection regardless of whether it gets replaced. I think I'm going to have to replace the other side though, because if that's not been secured in properly, then the bush is not going to be wearing properly and the arm's not going to be moving properly, which would explain the weird noises I'm getting from the rear. I think what I'm going to do is just undo the other side, the larger bush at the front, and then that'll allow this to drop down a bit more and give me a bit more access. Righty tighty. Right, another problem. This holding lock nut thingy that's supposed to hold this bolt. As soon as I started undoing the other one, it's just twisted. Get in focus. Twisted round. So it's not very helpful. I mean, there is a nut on the end of it, so I'm assuming that I'll be able to get a spanner on there, but I'm slightly miffed that that's not holding, so that doesn't inspire me. But there's definitely movement in that, and it's not brilliant. So I'm just gonna again crack on with removing these and see where we're at after that. What I'm gonna do is get my impact gun on here. I've got a 21 both sides, so I'm gonna hold it with the wrench on this side and impact on the other side to see if I can crack it off. Right, there you go. A bit of force sometimes is worth its weight in gold. Right, the other lock nuts come out. Hallelujah. Still a bit bent. There you go. Just slightly wondering whether I got too much copper slip on this last time, and it just got between the walls, you know, the walls of the suspension mounting and the bearing, and it's just allowing this to move around more than it should. The whole point is that you bolt it up when the suspension's raised up. And the bearings, not the bearings, the bushings stay static at normal ride height, so they're locked in place so that it doesn't place too much strain on them. I'm just concerned now about the front bush that has been like that for a while, I reckon, and that may well have worn it out prematurely, but let's see. Right, that's that side out. So the difference between when you do it after 17 years and after a few years is that the bolts aren't rusted into the bushes. So that's the rear bolt, and front one here it's still got copper slip on it. So that is the big difference when you replace them, if you put a bit of copper slip on. I might be a bit more careful if I put any on this time, just to put less on. I've also got different anti-seize compound now as well, but I'm just going to have a look at the arm, and we'll have an inspect of that and see what we think. So it was worth taking it off. It was worth having a think about this, because it is definitely not right that the front bush was able to rotate like that once the rear bush was released. So here we have our rear upper arm ready for inspection. Now, I can't see anything particularly bad about this bush, other than, unlike the arm I replaced on the other side and the actual replacement bush that I've purchased, it hasn't got any bump stops. I think it came like that from the new old stock. I didn't realise when I replaced it, I obviously wasn't paying attention. So I don't know whether the bump stops missing is bad for it as well, and whether that rotation is partly down to the bump stops missing. And then the other side also doesn't look particularly dead, but I have got another bush. There is some corrosion because it's an alloy casing on this one, so there is definitely some white powdery residue on there. Again, it doesn't look too bad, and I'm just wondering whether I will be able to press these out in order to replace them. One important bit is the orientation of the actual bush. So these are arrows on here, so I'm going to mark lines with a white paint pen just to give myself alignment marks, and make sure that if I do take these out and press them back in, that they're going to be in the correct orientation, or you will seriously have problems with your suspension. So I'm not sure about how to mark this one, but I will have a look at the bearing and see whether there's any reference points on it, and just make some markings so we can replace it correctly. Yeah, there you go. So give me a few minutes to set myself up. I've got some sort of sleeves and pullers and things that I've kind of invested in. I'm going to see whether that's going to be enough to get. I've done a dummy run on one from a knackered suspension arm, but I did have to cut the arm because it was so corroded in order to get that to push out using this stuff. But it did work. It just required a bit more. But I obviously don't want to cut this arm because I want to press. I don't want to cut this arm because I want to press new bushes back into it. Okay, so I don't know how easy this is to film or to do on camera, but I've got my bearing or bushing. I've got my bush kind of sleeves here that can pull. I've got it mounted, so I've got the bush so it will be pulling out in this direction. I've made a marking on the top in where the hole is in the suspension arm, just to give me a reference mark on there. I've got my lines across here which align the arrows on the bush, and the bush is marked as well so that I can compare it to the new bush that I've got. I'm going to see whether this will pull out. So this is the side where the bearing's already slightly pulled out, or not. It's not flush. It's flush on this side and it's not flush on that side. So I reckoned it would be easy to pull from that direction, because otherwise there's probably a lip of corrosion on here. And let's see. So I'm just going to have an experiment and see whether I can do it. May not work. I may have to give up and buy a whole suspension arm, but it's I thought it was worth a try and an interesting project to have a go at, because I'm a nerd. So I've got a breaker bar on this end. I'm going to get a spanner on this end. Let's just see whether we can apply enough pressure to start to move the bush from its resting place. What I'm noticing is with this one, it's kind of pushing, going in at an angle, so I'm going to see whether maybe I can find a slightly wider one of these. Right, if you want my honest opinion, that ain't coming out of there without a hydraulic press. I don't think I'm strong enough to do it. I did have a bit of a worry about that, so I'm not sure what to do now. I'm starting to get to the point, because I just really wanted to inspect it, whether I could just not tighten it up properly again, tighten up the rear bush properly. I mean, they're not shot, the bushes, so I don't think it's kind of terribly damaged. There may have been a bit more pressure on the front bush just because that one was static, but I think what I'm going to do is I might nick the bump stops out of the new bush, put them into the old bush, and put it all back together for temporary, and just have a think about what I want to do. I kind of always had this romantic image of being able to just, you know, press out bushes and things, but it's just too hard if you're not that strong and you don't really want to push beyond your limits, which I definitely don't want to do at the moment. So I'm going to admit defeat, but I think just getting it all tightened back up and correctly torqued. I've got a new set of fixings just to put it back together, so that's good. So I can put it back together with nice shiny bolts, which will be obviously, you know, it's going to start with new bolts again, so it's not going to be bad. Another thing I recently invested in is some aluminium based anti-seize, just because it seems to be the kind of thing that lots of people are using, and I thought I'd get some and try it out. So I'm gonna just stop there for a few minutes, have a cup of tea, and I might do a little bit of rust prevention on this. I'm not really that interested in doing anything major to it, but we'll just maybe just paint it with a bit of anti-rust stuff, and then put it back on the car. That rose joint will need doing, and I think the pullers will probably work on that, because it's a smaller thing, and it's also shielded from the elements by the rubber boots, so I'm assuming that that would be easier to pull out with a bearing puller. So stay tuned for that, but for now I'm just gonna, I think, get this cleaned up, get all the copper slip off of the bushings so that they've not contaminated, and then reinstall it at the correct ride height and the correct torques, which I'm not sure I did last time. And with my flexi head spanners, it's a bit easier to tighten up the top one this time, so we should get a slightly better result. Okay. Right, giving this a bit quick tidy up. I've put some of the bump stops into this side. I mean, it all looks fine. I've inspected it. Just giving it a bit of rust protection stuff on it that kind of just goes over the rust and whatever, you know, keeps it cleaner than it was. I'm not really an obsessive person when it comes to cleaning up rust, because cars just go rusty once, you know, it's going to go rusty again. And that's ready. I've prepared my nuts and bolts. I've got obviously got the position markings still on, so we can get it all back together nicely. Just got to get it back to the car, and then start aligning it and pushing it back into position.